Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, all attendees are in a listen-only mode. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I'd like to now turn the call over to Charles Gamble. Charles, you may begin.
Thank you, Greg. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today and listening in to one of our special populations of the American Community Survey that we actually collect data for, that being the American Indian and Alaska Natives, or AIAN for short. Once again, my name is Charles Gamble, and I work in the Outreach and Education branch within the American Community Surveys office. We also have staff online today helping out with any questions you may have during the webinar, as well as after the webinar as well. And this webinar is being recorded, and the recording along with the transcript will be posted within a few days after the webinar. So the first part of today's presentation, I'll be going over the basics of the American Community Survey. Next, I'll discuss the ACS data collection with our regional offices, followed by ways to find census products, and I'll also cover some additional resources available on our website for learning more about the survey. And finally, I'll reserve some time for any questions at the end. So before we dive into the specifics of the ACS and the American Indian and Alaska Native data, I want to start with a quick overview of the U.S. Census Bureau as a whole. So obviously most people hear the Census Bureau and automatically think the census or the decennial census every 10 years. But yes, we do more than just that of counting people every 10 years. So the Census Bureau is the largest of 13 primary federal government statistical agencies. And while most are familiar with the decennial census, we also conduct more than 130 censuses and surveys of households and businesses across the nation each year. This does include the American Community Survey and more than 30 other household surveys. There are also over 60 economic programs, and of these, the economic census is, which takes place every 5 years, is the most comprehensive. And there is also information on our nation's public sector provided through the Census of Governments. The Census Bureau's mission is to serve as the nation's leading provider of quality data about its people and economy, and our goal is to provide the best mix of timeliness, relevancy, quality, and cost of data we collect and services that we provide. Now, as for the ACS, it is on the leading edge of survey design, continuous improvement, and data quality. It is the nation's most current, reliable, and accessible data source for local statistics on critical planning topics. The survey itself samples approximately 3.5 million addresses each year, and the data collected continuously throughout the year to produce annual social, economic, housing, and demographic estimates. Data collected through the ACS helps to inform the distribution of hundreds of billions in federal funds each year, and our estimates cover more than 40 topics, support more than 300 known federal uses, and countless non-federal uses. The Census Bureau typically releases 3 sets of data estimates from the ACS each year in the form of 1-year and 5-year period data sets, as well as 1-year supplemental estimates. So given the fact that the American Community Survey is part of the decennial census program, it is important that we point out the differences between the two. So ACS estimates are based on a sample of the population, whereas the census is based on the official count of the population. So every year, over 3.5 million housing units are contacted by the Census Bureau to participate in the ACS. The information obtained from the sample is then used to estimate characteristics about the total population in a timely and cost-effective manner. However, these estimates differ from data obtained in a census where every household in the nation is contacted. Since ACS uses a sample of the population, ACS data have an element of uncertainty and therefore include a margin of error, or MOE for short. Now, what the MOE tells us is how much the estimate may actually vary from the true total population. So what does the ACS collect? The ACS collects detailed social, economic, housing, and demographic characteristics, whereas the census collects basic demographics such as age, sex, race, Hispanic origin, household relationship, and housing tenure. Now, what is produced? The ACS produces population and housing characteristics, whereas the census produces population and housing totals and selected characteristics. Now, when is the new data available? The ACS occurs annually, reflecting a period of time over which the data are collected, averaging data for 12 months or 60 months, whereas the census occurs every 10 years and reflects a specific point in time. Now, the content collected by the American Community Survey, as you may have heard me mention earlier, can be grouped into 4 main types of characteristics. We have our social, demographic, economic, and housing. Your social characteristics include topics such as education, marital status, fertility, and veterans. The American Community Survey also collects basic demographic characteristics such as age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin. And this is the same information collected on the decennial census as well. Also, economic characteristics, which include topics such as employment status, income, and commuting to work. And housing characteristics include topics such as tenure, information about occupancy and the structure itself, which includes home value, housing cost, and other topics you may not think of, like vehicles available. Now, each question on the ACS is used for federal and state government programs, and these topics are used to produce more than 1,000 tables for local communities each year, including American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian areas. So along the topics we just covered, the ACS provides data for more geographies on an annual basis than any other household survey. So over 13,000 geographies for one-year estimates, 15,000 geographies for one-year supplemental estimates, and 776,000 geographies for five-year estimates. So the image on the slide gives you a breakdown of those geographies for which the ACS data are produced and their hierarchy. So smaller and lower geographies fit neatly within larger geographies directly connected by lines. So for example, school, congressional, and state legislative districts fit neatly within states and do not cross state boundaries. However, they may cross counties as well as metropolitan area boundaries. This visualization also provides you with smaller geographic building blocks like the block group. And the ACS's unique ability to provide on a wide range of geographies is what makes it or gives it this broad appeal to many data users. Specifically in context for our webinar today, the ACS provides data on American Indian, Alaska Native, or AIAN areas, as well as Hawaiian homeland areas referred to as HHL. So on this image, these areas are not connected to other geographic areas, given the fact federal reservations as well as homelands can cross state and other geographic boundaries. For example, the Navajo Nation Reservation spans 3 states, being Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. And also AIAN and HHL areas are areas in which the Census Bureau recognizes as territories over which AIAN tribes have primary governmental authority. So on the previous slide, I outlined the ACS geography as a whole and pointed out how AIAN and HHL areas do not necessarily fit within that general hierarchy. So here I'm going to point out a few of the AIAN HHL areas that the ACS does include, such as reservations, off-reservation trust lands, Alaska National Regional corporations, and more that ACS provides data for. AIN geographies are split between legal boundaries, like reservations, and statistical boundaries, like tribal tracts and block groups. Now, in comparison to the typical ACS hierarchy, geographic levels like county and county subdivision, places, among others, are not shown because AIAN and Native Hawaiian areas do not nest within them. A good source to learn more about these geographies is through the ACS's AIN handbook, which is actually linked on this slide. You can also use the QR code to find the handbook as well. And specifically within the handbook, Chapter 2 describes geography of AIAN areas. Now, if you're looking for just quick definitions of geographic areas, the Census Glossary is also a good tool to use, and that can be found simply by accessing census.gov/glossary. So a few slides back, when I introduced the ACS, I mentioned the different products the ACS provides, the one-year supplemental, and 5-year estimates. So these data products are typically released about 1 year after the data are collected. Generally, data is released starting in September, the calendar year after the data are actually collected. So for September, the calendar year after the collection as 1 year estimates. In October, the calendar year after collection as 1 year supplemental estimates, and 5-year estimates are generally released in December, the calendar year after collection. So what I mean by that, for example, 1 year ACS data collected from January 1st through December 31st of 2022 will be released in September of 2023. Now, 1 year estimates combine data collected over 12 months are available for geographic areas with a population of 65,000 or more. ACS 1 year supplemental estimates are a subset of detailed tables that provide for geographic areas with a population of 20,000 or more. And these 1 year supplemental estimates provide twice as much data as compared to the typical 1 year release. And ACS 5-year estimates combine data collected over 60 months. and are available for geographies of all sizes down to those more granular census tracts and block group levels. The full detailed data release schedule for each year is available on a link on the bottom of the slide. You can easily navigate to that by going to census.gov/ACS. So now we'll move into talking about the data collection procedures the Census Bureau uses to receive the important information from tribal areas. First, and to note, the Census Bureau follows the racial and ethnic classification standards issued by the Office of Management and Budget, or OMB for short. OMB standards outline the categories federal agencies must use to collect and present federal data on race and ethnicity. So OMB requires 5 minimum race categories: white, Black or African American, American Indian or Alaska Native, Asian, and Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander. Now, a 6th category titled Some Other Race, as seen on the ACS questionnaire, was added to the ACS with OMB approval. These standards also state that respondents should be able to have the option of selecting one or more races. And currently, OMB is also in the process of updating these race and ethnic classification standards as well. Now, as for the OMB defines the American Indian or Alaskan Native race classification as a person having origins in any of the original peoples of North and South America, including Central America, and who maintains tribal affiliation or community attachment. Respondents who identify themselves as American Indian or Alaskan Native are asked to report their enrolled or principal tribe. So therefore, tribal data and tabulations reflect the written entries reported on the questionnaires. And I also want to point out that the information collected by the ACS on the AI-AN race classification is based on self-identification, and therefore does not reflect any designation of federal or state recognized tribe. Now, to collect the data, the ACS uses a multi-mode collection strategy with multiple mailings in order to get responses from all segments of the population. So we collect data using 12 monthly independent samples a year. And the ACS data collection operation uses 3 modes: internet, mail, and personal visit that take place over a 3-month period. So data collection for each sample spans 3 months. So data are being collected for 3 samples at a time and do overlap. For housing units, we start by mailing an invitation to respond online. And if an online response is not received, these addresses are mailed a paper questionnaire packet 3 weeks later. And at the start of the 3rd month, we take a sample of non-responding and non-mailable addresses and send them to in-person interviewing or non-response follow-up, also known as CAPI. And this is where our field representatives all over the country follow up with addresses in which responses were not received. We also do continue to accept internet and mail responses throughout the whole data collection period. And if at any time an internet or paper questionnaire response is received, the address is then removed from the data collection workload. Respondents also have the option and give the information of the telephone questionnaire assistance line if they have questions regarding the survey or if they'd also like to answer the survey over the phone. Now, as for AI-AN areas and remote Alaska areas, the Census Bureau does have some additional procedures in place with the intent to provide the most accurate statistics as possible for AI-AN areas. For AI-AN, the overall sample size is increased as well as reallocated for these smaller geographic areas to create better quality statistics. Also in these areas, field representatives attempt to make personal visits for all non-response cases. And in general, for most AIN addresses that are unmailable or hard to reach rural areas, there is an emphasis placed on making contact through personal visits. We also have more flexible data collection procedures for remote parts of Alaska. There we have 2 samples a year, each sample spanning over a 6-month period from January to June and July to December. These periods were expanded to 6 months in 2021 based on feedback from our field representatives, based on cost of travel, difficulty reaching certain areas due to seasonal weather, etc. So previously these samples had only been 4 months long. Also for both AI-AN and remote Alaska areas, and our response was and did become an option in 2021, providing an additional means of receiving data from these areas. Now, to elaborate a bit more on the several ways the ACS increases the sample size of AI-AN and HHL areas, in general, we allocate the sample with a goal to produce higher quality across smaller geographic areas, which in turn directly affects smaller AI-AN areas. The sample rate can be as high as 15% of addresses annually, and over a 5-year period, up to 75% of addresses sampled in these less populated areas. In addition, we have special provisions to further increase the sample in tribal areas. So as I just mentioned, there are higher sampling rates for smaller geographic areas, and for most of the country, we use the total population to determine the size of an area. However, for AIAN and HHL areas, we base it on the estimated AIAN or HHL headed households in that area. Now, this results in an increased sampling rate specifically for those key areas. For all AIN areas, including remote Alaska and all HHL areas, where 10% or more of the population identifies their race as AIAN, we attempt a personal visit interview with every non-responding and non-mailable address. And this is something we only do for these areas. So in comparison, for the remainder of the country, we attempt a personal visit interview on only a sample of the non-responding or non-mailable addresses. So I want to point out, even before data collection procedures begin, the Census Bureau works to build a relationship with the AIN communities in coordination of activities related to the American Community Survey, as well as other Census Bureau programs. To aid in the data collection of these important areas, the Census Bureau operates following its own AIAN policy, in which we work with each tribal government one by one in order to coordinate data collection to respect each tribe's customs, beliefs, and cultural norms. It is of utmost importance for the Census Bureau that all operations, including the ACS, be conducted with the acknowledgement and cooperation of the tribal authority over reservation areas. So before visiting AIN areas, the regional office staff will contact the tribal government of that area to establish a person of contact. And in most cases, this is the tribal leader's designee of the reservation area. This begins to develop the one-on-one relationship with these areas and to receive approval from tribal governments and leadership. And I want to add that Census Bureau field representatives follow set procedures to ensure interviews are conducted in a culturally sensitive manner, respecting tribal customs, beliefs, as well as cultural norms. So I just mentioned the Census regional offices on the previous slide and how they work with building a rapport with tribal governments in those areas. So I also wanted to share this image, which breaks down the 6 different Census regional offices that manage data collection and the states and geographic areas they're responsible for. So the 6 regional areas are New York, as you can see in purple, Philadelphia in yellow, Atlanta in green, Chicago in red, Denver in blue, and Los Angeles in orange. So while there are tribal areas located throughout all the Census Bureau regions, the Denver and Los Angeles regions contain the most tribal areas in comparison. So these regions, along with their field representatives that work in those areas, likely work with tribal communities more often. So after just mentioning the Census regional offices, the geographic areas they cover, and how they work with building a rapport with tribal governments and tribal areas, I do want to mention the Census Bureau also has staff known as Tribal Relations Specialists who are part of the Tribal Relations Program. These specialists support their regional offices and their field representatives, helping maintain a connection with AIAN areas, and especially aid field representatives in areas where gaining access has been difficult. These specialists work to maintain as well as improve tribal relations in their designated areas or designated states, and specialists help increase awareness of census products with tribal partners, as well as aid in training census staff on tribal culture and engagement protocols. Overall, these specialists support the mission of the Census Bureau and are a vital piece to receiving and providing key data. The Census Bureau's Tribal Relations Program typically consists of 4 specialists who report to the regional offices. This map on the slide has some similarities to the regional office map and coverage on the previous slide, but here you can see what specialist is responsible for which state or area. Currently, there is 1 vacancy for the orange colored states, but in the meantime, one of the other tribal specialists can be contacted for assistance. And again, these slides will be made available to you on the Census Academy page where you registered for the webinar, so you have access to all this contact information as well. So as far as ACS data collection within AIN areas, we are always looking for ways to improve that collection and to get those responses. For example, we recently designed 2 brochures to help with data collection in these areas. Field representatives will have these brochures handy to give to the respondents. The green brochure, as seen on the slide, is for the American Indian areas, and the blue brochure is for Alaska Native areas. Both brochures explain what the ACS is, the importance of responding to the survey, and provides answers for some frequently asked questions. Both brochures also have a place for field representatives to include the Internet ID for the household to respond online to the survey. And the brochures also provide information on completing the survey by phone as well. Now, the next segment of today's webinar will be about the tools available to access ACS data products, and specifically AIAN data. So before we dive into the actual data tools used to find AIN ACS data, I want to take a moment to point out some of the known uses that the AIN data is used for. So organizations like tribal governments, grant seekers and researchers, as well as federal and non-federal organizations who use ACS data serve the AIN and HHL communities. ACS data have been found useful in accessing funding, supporting tribal programs and initiatives for economic development, housing needs, and access to health and educational services for people in those communities. A quick example of this and one of those programs is the grant seekers like the California Indian Manpower Consortium, which obtained a grant from the Department of Labor to support a project known as Career Pathways for Native Youth. This provided career training and resources for AIAN youth who had limited or no working experience. And for this project, ACS data on unemployment was used to identify the need for career resources and training among American Indian youth. So with the use of ACS data for AIN populations, we want to ensure ACS estimates are accurate and representative of the AIN population and their geographies. Therefore, we always strongly encourage tribal community members to respond to the ACS so we can capture data on these important populations. So getting into the actual data tools at the Census Bureau, we offer numerous tools for a variety of different data users. All data tools are available from the census.gov webpage by simply following the URL you see at the bottom of the slide. However, the two tools I want to focus on in context for our AIAN topic today is data.census.gov and My Tribal Area. And both offer important data for the AIN communities. So first, let's jump into data.census.gov, which is the Census Bureau's main data tool and is a primary way to access data from the American Community Survey, the 2020 Census, and many other surveys and programs from the United States Census Bureau. Data.census.gov provides a search bar in which data users can search topics and keywords or look up specific data tables by specific table IDs. There's also an advanced search feature allowing users to select a specific survey of their choice, including geographies of interest, topics, and more from tabulated list. And we do provide a resource webpage to learn more about data.census.gov, which is provided at the bottom of the slide. And what I want to do now is to show a live demonstration on how to find tables based on AIAN geographies. So this is for AIAN members who live on tribal areas. Also find tables by race and ethnicity for AIAN members who live on and off tribal areas. And last, I also show a demonstration on how to find data for a specific tribal groups. So what I'm going to do right now is flip my screen over to data.census.gov. And here we are. So as you can see that search bar right away in the middle of the screen. But for this demonstration, I want to use advanced search, and I'm in favor of advanced search for many of my searches. So let's go ahead and click advanced search. And what I'm going to do here now first is go to geography. And from geographies, you can then see a full list of geographies. You can scroll through them. These four will pop up towards the top of the page. They're broken out in alphabetical order. I'm going to select this geography here today to keep it simple. But once again, if you're interested in other geographies and what they mean and what their definition is, remember the Census Glossary as well as the AIAN Handbook for any of these other geographies you may be interested in. So for this example, I'm going to click American Indian Area, Alaska Native Area, and Hawaiian Homeland. And what this is going to do now is give you a full list of all these different reservations, homelands, trust lands. You can scroll through them. I like to use the search function up here to just type in the first three characters of what I'm searching for. And I'm going to search for the Navajo Nation Reservation. So I can just type in the first three characters, NAV, and it should pre-populate for me. And there it is. I can select that checkbox. Once I do that, my filter then comes over here to my filters over to the left-hand side. And then also I'm interested in, let's say, because today we're talking about the ACS, is the ACS survey. So I can go to surveys. I can select American Community Survey. I'm going to select my 5-year estimates. And we have a bunch of tables here we can select from. To keep it simple, I'm going to select detail tables. There are other tables here. I will use in my last demonstration, the American Indian Alaska Native detail tables, which I can drill down to more specific groups. But for now, just looking for the overall geography, I'm going to click on detail tables. And then from here, I can go ahead and click search. So the data.census.gov will return you a search showing you a map of the Navajo reservation area. You can see that there's 964 tables. That's a lot of tables. So you can scroll through them all if you'd like. But let's say for this instance, I'm interested in a certain topic. I could then come to topics and I could add in, let's say I'm interested in education. And I could select educational attainment. My educational attainment comes here as well. For my filter, I can remove this pane. And now I have all tables built out by educational attainment for the Navajo reservation. I could click through these and you could then see it is then pulling in the geography of the Navajo Nation reservation for educational attainment tables. All right, so I'm gonna go back to the home screen of data.census.gov to start my next demonstration. The next one, I'm going to actually just look for the actual race as an umbrella for somebody who maybe had responded to the survey as their race iteration as being American Indian or Alaskan Native. So I click Advanced Search. I can then come to Topics. I can select race and ethnicity. I'm going to go to the top folder here. It says American Indian, Alaska Native. I'm going to select the American Indian folder here. Or excuse me, for this demonstration, I'm just going to go ahead and select the overall umbrella American Indian, Alaska Native. You'll see my filter come up over to the left-hand side. And then once again, I'm interested in the ACS. I'm going to go click Surveys, the American Community Survey, 5-year estimates, and detail tables. And what I can do then is once again hit search. And what you'll see is these tables then populate here. I have 51 tables. What you'll notice is most of these tables will have a C iteration at the end of the table itself. That is the race iteration for AIAN. So if you were to click on this, what you would see is that the table itself is built out for American Indian, Alaska Native alone, as far as the race iteration is concerned. Once again, I could come to topics and build in other topics of that I like if I'm interested in to kind of narrow down my search. So I won't have 51 tables to go through. So I could narrow my search down to, let's say, I was interested in health. And then I could come to disability. And that would give me one result of a disability table, including the race of AIAN. All right. And for my last demonstration, I'm going to look up a specific race group. So I'm going to go back to that data.census.gov homepage, click Advanced Search one more time. I'm going to then I'm going to click Surveys first this time. And I'm going to go back to that American Indian, Alaska Native detail tables that I spoke about earlier. So I'm going to select the American Community Survey, 5-year estimates. I'm going to click the American Indian, Alaska Native detail tables. And this is a special tabulation that we release typically every 5 years. It allows you to drill down to specific race groups or tribal groups. So I'm going to select this here. You'll see it populate over to my left-hand side. Let's see now. Let's say I'm also interested in topics. Let's say I'm interested in education. So I select educational attainment, and I can select search. Now what this is going to do is it's providing me 3 tables based on my search criteria, based on my search filters. I'm going to go ahead and click on the first table, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to build in a specific tribal group. I'm just going to shrink in my filters and make this page a little bit bigger. And I'm going to click on the topics function at the top of the table. And then from there, I can select race and ethnicity, the folder for American Indian, Alaska Native, American Indian. And therefore, it's going to give me a full list of different tribal groups. For this tribal group, I'm going to look up the Piscataway tribe. So I'm going to begin typing it in. It should automatically populate, and there it is. And I'm going to do Piscataway tribal grouping alone. I can then close this pane to then see my table. And let's say I also want to build in a geography. So right now it's the entire US, but let's say I'm interested in a certain geography for this data to find estimates or data for a specific state. So I'm going to go to geographies, the geo function. I'm going to select state. And then I'm going to go down to the state of Maryland and select Maryland, the checkbox. I can close this pane. And now what you'll have here is a table that's then now built out for the geography, the state of Maryland, and for the Piscataway tribal grouping. So hopefully that's helpful to get you started on finding some AI information, different means through geography, through the race iteration as a whole of AIAN, and then specific tribal groupings as well. I'm going to get back to our slides now and push forward. So after our demonstration, let's take a look and break down a few different data products for AIN provided for data users. So first is the race iterated tables, which provide the most detailed estimates on all topics and are available for both 1-year ACS data as well as 5-year ACS data. And given these tables are detailed tables, these tables begin with the letter B, and the race iteration tables end with the letters A through I, depending on the race group data users are seeking data for. So for example, a detailed table ending in C is for the AIN race group. An example table would be B0100C. So if you do recall, this was in my first, I believe my first demonstration, I did point out these tables and how they use an advanced search, and you can see the race iteration at the end of the table being C, pointing to the AIAN race classification. Since these tables provide both 1-year and 5-year ACS data, the 1-year data has a threshold of geographic areas with a population of at least 65,000, whereas the 5-year data has no limitations on geographic areas. Also, every year, the Census Bureau releases selected population profiles, which are summary tables for detailed racial, ethnic, and tribal groups. These profiles are only available in ACS 1-year estimates and not 5-year estimates. So SPPs for short are always labeled S0201 and also S0201PR for the Puerto Rico version of the table. There are also 2 thresholds for SPPs based on population totals for both geographic areas and population groups. Therefore, only geographic areas with populations of at least 500,000 are available, and also only specific population groups with a population of at least 65,000. So a quick way to access and locate the selected population profiles is to visit census.gov/ACS, select the data selection from the left-hand navigation, and then select the data tables. Once you're on the ACS data tables page, you will find information and links for the selected population profiles products. And also, once you do open the SPP table, like S0201 or S0201PR, in data.census.gov, you can select the Geos tool and the Topics tool at the top of the table to select specific geographies like tribal areas and or drill down to specific race groups. Just as you saw me do in one of the demonstrations, add again specific tribal grouping groups using the Topics function. And although the selected population profiles or working with the selected population profiles, do be mindful of the thresholds on the table. So therefore, geographic areas of at least 500,000 in population and race groups of at least 65,000. And last, and certainly not least, is the every year we do release or not every year, every 5 years, the Census Bureau, we typically release 2 data products that provide the most detailed data for specific population groups. And these products are known as SPTs and AINTs, so selected population tables and American Indian and Alaska Native tables. SPTs are available for selected race, Hispanic origin, tribal, and ancestry populations, where the population of the group must be at least 7,000 at the national level. And the American Indian and Alaska Native tables are available for selected tribal populations, and the AIN tables provide more detailed tribal categories compared to the selected population tables. And these AIAN tables provide data of American Indian or Alaska Native groups who have a population of at least 100 at the national level. And I did use this type of table during the demonstration, the last demonstration, when specifically pulling data for the Piscataway tribe using the topics function at the top of the table itself. So these tables are different. So please don't get confused the SPTs and the AINTs with the selected population profiles. The SPTs and the AINTs are based on 5-year ACS data compared to the 1-year ACS data used for the selected population profiles. Also, SPTs and AINTs allow data users to obtain data at lower levels of geographies like counties or places and other geographies that have smaller populations than 65,000 because they're not bound to that 1 year 65,000 threshold. The most current release of these tables, the SPTs and AINTs, is the 2011 through 2015 ACS estimates, but I'm proud to announce that the 2017 through 2021 ACS estimates for these tables are set to be released on June 15th, just about 2 weeks from today. And these data products can be accessed from the ACS data page at census.gov/ACS. Then once again, selecting data from the left-hand navigation, and then selecting the race, ethnicity, ancestry, and AIAN tables link. And once on the SPT and AINT page, the links to the tables will automatically open for access in data.census.gov. And as I promised, the last tool I want to quickly talk about is the My Tribal Area tool. So My Tribal Area is a tool that gives you quick and easy access to selected ACS statistics representing the populations living on American Indian, Alaska Native areas. This tool features the latest 2017 through 2021 ACS 5-year estimates and the reservations in tribal area level. Users can utilize a type ahead search function and search by tribal name or tribal area, or users can select their state of interest and then choose from a populated list of tribal areas within that selected state. The data in My Tribal Area features people, jobs, housing, economy, and educational topics. There's also a glossary function at the bottom right-hand corner of the tool that provides definitions for American Indian and Alaska Native geographic areas as well. And it's very simple to access My Tribal Area. You can simply go to census.gov/tribal. So as we finish up today, let's talk about a variety of resources we provide for learning more about AIN communities, the data that ACS provides, and just overall ACS as a whole. So here at the Census Bureau headquarters, we have an Intergovernmental Affairs Office who work closely with AIN tribal nations and act as a liaison to develop and maintain communication and lasting relationships with tribal officials. They also provide technical support for potential policy changes, help with educational efforts regarding Census Bureau programs with tribal members, and provide advisory efforts to Census Bureau leadership when communicating with tribal officials. And at the bottom of the slide is the contact information for our Intergovernmental Affairs Office, which is ocia.tao@census.gov. The first resource I want to point out is the ACS main page, which is a great tool to start with if you have questions about the ACS. As I mentioned a couple of times for this presentation, that can be accessed by simply going to census.gov/ACS. And the American Community Survey website contains a wealth of information about the survey, the data products, tools for data users, and other helpful information. We also have several ACS educational materials available for data users for AIN data. All resources can be found on our Information for AIN Populations page. This page is essentially a one-stop shop for information and resources related to the ACS and American Indian and Alaska Natives. So on the page, you can actually find our ACS information guide, which is basically a comprehensive guide to all things ACS, covering everything from the historical origins of the survey to ACS subject and data products, and data user resources like where to find more in-depth information and help. There's also our ACS handbook for users of data of American Indians and Alaska Natives, which helps data users learn how to access and use ACS data. And this handbook also provides real-world case scenarios demonstrating how the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, the Social Security Administration, and the National Congress of Administration Indians used ACS data. The page also contains several flyers like the ACS Resources for American Indians and Alaska Natives flyer, which explains the purpose of the ACS, why tribal participation is important to the survey, and how to actually complete the survey itself. Another flyer is accessing AIN and Hawaiian Homeland data. It is a quick 2-page flyer showing you how to easily access AIN geographies on data.census.gov, very similar to what I showed in the live demonstration. And the link to this page is actually located at the bottom of the slide. Or you can simply go to census.gov/ACS and then select the information for on the left-hand navigation of the web page. So as I begin to wrap up today, we invite you to stay in touch by telling us how you use data from the American Community Survey. We're always on the hunt and trying to promote our Share Your Story section of our webpage and looking for new stories from data users like yourself. So if you feel so inclined to do so, please submit a story on a story of your use of the ACS data. It would be great to post your story on our webpage, and we're also very much in the hunt for a story pertaining around American Indian Alaska Native community. Also consider joining a group we have specifically for our users of ACS data. This is known simply as the ACS Data Users Group. This group includes a website and online community with over 4,000 members where you can share messages, materials, and announcements related to the survey, and membership is free and open to all interested ACS data users. And finally, you can sign up for and manage email updates from the ACS. Our monthly events and updates email will alert you when new materials are available, and you'll stay up to date on data releases as well. So please visit the QR codes under each icon to learn more about these resources. So in closing, I want to share information on how to find answers to get support after this webinar. You can visit our webpage once again at census.gov/ACS. If you have data user questions, you can reach out to us by phone or email. Our email is acso.users.support@census.gov or by phone at 1-800-923-8282. We also have our Census Academy, which is a learning hub for data skills. You can learn how to access and use Census Bureau data your way through our how-to data gem videos and in-depth courses, webinars, and tutorials. And in fact, we even have a course, Discovering the American Community Survey, that we've been working on and pushing videos out for at this time. This page also has links to where you can request training from the data dissemination specialist at no cost. DDSs are located within your region and can provide you with assistance about Census Bureau data, such as how to obtain or understand ACS data. Whether conducting one-on-one webinars with business startups or conducting large-scale presentations at universities, these specialists strive to put the public in touch with the data they need. And if you're on social media, connect with us at US Census Bureau using the hashtag ACS data. And one last thing, before I open the line for any additional questions you may have had that weren't answered, if you're using ACS estimates, make sure to source the Census Bureau American Community Survey as to where you receive the data. It helps people to know that the information they were using is powered by the ACS. This concludes today's webinar, and we'll open for any additional questions that may be on the line or maybe in the chat feature. Once again, thank you for attending, and hopefully this offers some important information to how the Census Bureau collects data on the important AIAN communities. Are there any additional questions in the chat?
Hey, Charles, do you just want to go back a couple slides to show how to
Sure.
cite ACS data tables?
Yep. The Source Us section here?
Yes. So the question was just the best way to cite ACS tables.
Sure. And these slides are also made available to you on the Census Academy webpage at this time. We uploaded them this morning, so feel free to go download that PDF of the slides, and all this is available to you. Mary, are there any other questions that were outlined that we have?
Yes. Let me read off. So one question that came in is there any indicator variable in tables and or in microdata to produce estimates of all AIAN people living on reservations or other tribal lands in a state?
So as in like a catch-all within one state or within the nation itself?
Yes. So we did request to send out to the support email. So if you want to put that back up for people to
Sure.
submit their questions.
Sure, yeah, we can look into that for you. You can email your question to acso.users.support@census.gov. Off the top of my head, I don't know if we have a catch-all for within one state or within the entire nation for every, just counting like reservation or trust lands.
One question that came in, is there veteran data, and in particular, is it in Alaska?
We do have veteran data, specifically in Alaska. That'd be something I have to search for in data.census.gov. You're more than welcome to do that yourself, but you can do that by simply using that advanced search feature within data.census.gov, building in your topics specifically for veterans, and then looking into your areas, your AIN areas, geography, the geography filter in those locations.
Those are all the questions for now, Charles.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining in. And like I said, once again, the materials for this webinar will be posted within a few days or within the next week or so. Thank you. Thanks again.
This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect at this time.